What is going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. In this video we are going to be talking about how to use the map object in Bubble, and this is a very useful component, but there are some issues and some problems that people may have from time to time. And so in this video we're going to have a full tutorial on how to properly use the map component, and we're also going to be doing a little bit of API calls so that you can learn how to get addresses from a third-party API and place them on the map. Now, before you get started, it's very important. You go into settings and you configure your API keys. Okay, you need these two keys. You need the geocode API key and you need the map API key because it's using Google Maps. And in order to use Google Maps, you have to enter these API keys. And this is actually very easy to do. You just follow these instructions here, very simple. This is actually the same page, and the process for setting it up is the exact same process, and as a result you're gonna get two specific API keys that you can start to use in your app. So this is very simple to do, but make sure you get this done. Now, assuming you already got this done, what we're gonna do is we're gonna build a very simple app just to show you how it works. And then later on in the video, we are going to be talking about more advanced use cases. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a couple of elements. I'm going to drag the map element here. I'm going to drag a input, a very simple input here. And I'm going to drag a button here. And the objective is very simple. You'll be able to enter an address and it's going to display here. And so I'm going to change the placeholder here, type address. Here, this is going to be a button. I'm just going to call it submit. Very simple. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. So let's make it just a little bit, something like this. This looks nice. And it's very simple. And the beauty of this method is that you don't even need a workflow for this. This is going to happen automatically. So first of all, you want to make sure that the input is input address, okay? I like to name my inputs starting from input. That way I can easily find them. And then you go to the map object here and you want to set the marker address. If you click on it, you want to set it to the input addresses value. And you have various number of markers. You have none, you have single list. We're going to talk about that in a second. But right now we're just using the default value, which is single. Now, the map type, you have various options. You can do road map, you can do hybrid, you can do satellite, and you can do a terrain. We're just going to do road map, which seems to be the default. And you also have the map style, map box style, Apple map style, pale down, lots of interesting styles you can do. I'm just going to set it to normal. You also have allow zooming and dragging. We're going to select that, disable zooming. And then you have your initial zoom, and this is your how zoomed in do you want the initial map to show up. So you can do street level, which is around zoom level of 15. You can do a zoom level of 10, which is kind of a city level. You can also do zoom level of 5, which is kind of a region, state level. And then I assume something like 1 is going to really zoom out. So it really depends on how you want. I'm just going to put it to 10. Which seems like a nice trade-off between not being too zoomed in and showing you everything that you need to see as well. And so we have this. Now, when we preview the map, all you have to do is enter the address. And so now we have the app loaded. So if you enter an address, let's say you can even enter a zip code. So let's say I enter 90210, which is a famous Beverly Hills address, and as you can see, it centers it on this specific zip code here, Beverly Hills. Now I can do the same thing. I can enter a New York City zip code, and it's gonna go back to New York City. Here's a Miami zip code, and we are in Miami. Very simple app, works fairly well. Looks like it's working pretty well. Now, let's go back to our app and let's try something a little bit different, okay? Let's talk about the kind of things that you can do with the app. Now, single is very simple, right? When it's single, so if you go to none, let me show you what none is. First of all, before continuing, okay? None essentially does not have any markers, okay? And this is useful, I suppose, for showing you a region, not specifically showing you a specific marker to an address or a city. If you want to show a region, so let's say I put Beverly Hills 90210, I'm not putting in a specific address, so it's useful for me to just show the region. Or let's say I put San Diego, California. I want it to be on San Diego. Now, obviously, I could put a marker there if I wanted to, but it's not, I don't think in this case it's very important. It's useful just to show San Diego. Or let's say I put Miami, Florida, and it's essentially going to center on Miami. So this is great if you are doing something with a region. I could put something like New York, and that is exactly what it's going to do. So in this case, I don't really want a marker. I want just the main region centered, okay? And so this is the first type, right? This is the none. If you select number of markers is none. If you select single, it's going to have a marker there. This is something that we did in the beginning of the video. And so this is very simple to do. The marker address is essentially, you can input it from here. You can set, it could be set. You can get it from a database, which is something that we're going to talk about in a second as well. You can do that. A lot of people actually, I noticed, have trouble with list, right? So list is a little bit more complicated. We're going to clear this. And for list, you have to set something called the type of markers, right? So what it's going to do, if you select the type of markers, it's going to actually display one of the data types. So remember, we have user, which is a data type here. If you go to data, type, we have the user here, okay? And so you can actually get the user, the address from the user themselves. And I'm going to show you how that works. Okay, we're going to go back to the design. Or you can set a geographic address. If you set a geographic address, it's going to be just like a regular address or a list of addresses, because we have a list here. And so let me show you how a user works, right? Let's say you have an address as stored as part of the user record or another record. So in this case, we only have the user. And then later on in the video, I'm going to show you how to get all these addresses from an external API as well. And so if we go into the data tab here, we have the user here, and I created a new address. So if I remove this, I can just click on create a new field, and I'm going to call this address. And this is a user address, and it's very important that you set it to a geographic address, okay? That way it can parse it and display it correctly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to app data, and I have my record here. And so if I edit this record, I have the address here as well. I have this address record, and I'm going to put 90210. I'm going to press enter, and it basically pulls a random Beverly Hills address, it looks like, right? So now I have a Beverly Hills address. I can do the same thing for Miami, 33133, press enter, and then it's Miami, Florida. So let's say I have it set to Miami here. I'm going to hit save. And now I have my own user record, right, with my own email, everything here set to, actually, it should be Miami. So let's refresh this. Let's make sure it's actually showing up as Miami instead of the other record here. So if we go back to our data type, we go to the app data, all users, and as you can see, it says Miami, Florida. Now, if we go back to our app and we go back to the map, we're going to choose user here. And the data source is going to be current user's address, okay? Current user's address. And in this case, we're doing single, okay? So if we do single, we have current user's address. And so if I preview this map, what's going to happen is it's going to center it on my specific address. Now, remember, I am logged in because it's using my own. If I log out, it's not going to work, okay? It's very important to understand. So if I click on log out, it's not going to display it correctly. It goes back to New York, which seems like to be some kind of a default. Maybe it's set somewhere, but it seems like a default. But if I go back and log in, so I go here and log in, I put my email address, I put my password here, and I log in, it's going to go back to Miami because now it has the data, it has access. And this is actually fairly simple to do because if I go in here, it's a single, and obviously it's going to be addressed. Now it gets a little bit trickier if you want to do a list. And a list is very, very useful if you want to display multiple records. When you do a list, it essentially wants an array. It does not want an address, right? So for instance, this evaluates to geographic address, okay? But it wants multiple addresses. It does not want one. And so there's lots of ways of doing it. If you have multiple users somewhere and they all have an addresses, it's obviously going to work because then you're going to have an array of addresses. But what I want to show you here is a little bit more of an advanced method. And actually, this is a method that many of you are going to be using because a lot of you are going to be getting addresses from an external data set. Okay, and I actually had a video just the other day. I think it's one of the videos previous to this one where I talked about getting addresses from an external data set. And for this, you can obviously be using an app. Maybe you're using a specific service where you're pulling in various records with addresses. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a service called mock API. And mock API is a very, very important concept. Mock API is essentially a fake API. And this service here, mockapi.io, allows me to create a project that I can create multiple records and I can generate them randomly. I can have random usernames, random avatars, random addresses, all kinds of data, and I can have all kinds of operations on that data. I can create new records, I can delete them, I can edit, I can modify, and let me show you exactly how it works. So I'm logged in. This is a free app, or at least I'm using the free plan right now. And so I have my project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new project. We are going to call this users, okay? Because that is going to be, actually for the project name, I'm just going to call it project 1. API prefix optional. This is all optional. We're going to click create here. And now we have this project. I'm going to click on this project. And now we have the endpoint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new resource. Now, what is a resource? A resource is an object type. So it could be users, it could be projects, it could be movies. And in this case, I'm going to click on new resource. And I'm going to create a new resource of users. Now, you want to do plural because it's going to typically have multiple of these records. So you don't want to type user. You want to have a plural value. So users, movies, addresses, etc. And once I do this, now this is our schema, right? And this is essentially the records. Okay, so we have our ID. This is the object ID. It's going to be generated automatically. We have created at. We have name and we have an avatar. And this is using something called the faker.js library, which allows us to create multiple fake records. And I'm going to show you exactly. So what I need to do is I'm going to need to create a new field. This is going to be called an address. I'm going to choose faker and I'm going to use a zip code. Because as we've seen in the beginning of the video, you don't need to put a full address. You can enter a zip code and that's going to be enough. Okay, and so what we're going to do that. And now we're going to leave everything at default. We're going to hit create, and it created our new resource here. Now, what I want to do is I want to drag this here. I want to create, let's say I want to create 50 records. So I'm going to choose 50, and I'm going to hit that. Our data has been generated. So if I go into data, I should see 50 random records, and this is exactly what I see. So I have idea 1, created today's date. I have a fake name. I have a fake avatar. And I have a fake zip code. Now, all of this is great because now we can pull this data and we can show all of the zip codes and these users and all this stuff on a map. Now, in this video, I'm not going to be showing you a full tutorial. All I want to do is I want to show you the addresses. We're only talking about the address field. In some of the future videos, I may make a full tutorial with working with fake data. And so now we have an endpoint. So all I have to do is, right, if I go to data, I have an endpoint. So if I click on data, I have an endpoint. I can update it. I can do all kinds of things. I can also hit edit, and I can change some operations. I can add new field, etc., etc. Now, if I click on users and I open it up, I'm essentially making a REST API call, and I'm getting this data back. And this is perfect because now we can get this data inside of Bubble. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into plugins. I'm going to go make sure you have this API connector installed. I'm going to click on add another API. We're going to call this mock API. No authentication. We're going to expand our HTTP call. and this is going to be our users. Okay, users API. You can call it something like that. We're using get, and then you copy and paste this link here. When you hover over users, you're gonna be able to open this URL here. And now if we go back, and the next thing you want to do is you want to click on initialize call. Very, very important. So we're getting a 404 error. So we want to make sure that we set it up correctly. So if we go in here and we paste it, we want to make sure not found. So wait a second, let's refresh it. And let's see, let's open this users up here, and it's here. So maybe I had the wrong, I might have had the wrong URL. So if we select this, we go back, we paste it here, and now we need to do initialize call. Once we do that, we have our data. Now this is very, very important. For the address field, you want to make sure that you choose geographic address. Okay, if you do text, it's not going to work, or it's not going to work as well. Once you do that, you can hit save, and now we have our API. Okay, now you can go back to the design. You can pick list. Type of markers is going to be users API here. It knows that we have a new API. We're going to do users, and it automatically selects the proper address field because we specified that back when we executed our API call, that it knows this is an address. Okay, very, very important. And now it knows how to get the data. We specified the type of data. Now we need to make sure that we specify the data source, right? We're going to do get data from an external API. We're going to do mock API, and that's all you have to do. And now it knows how to do it. And so it's going to get those 50 records, and it should list them on the map correctly. So if we do preview, once we got the API, as you can see, we have a lot of these random addresses. Looks like we have Puerto Rico zip code there as well. We have Oregon, we have California, we have a lot of interesting addresses. Actually, it's interesting that we have Puerto Rico. I don't even know their address. And so if I Google for Puerto Rico zip code, as you can see, it's a zip code that starts with 2 zeros. And if we go to our mock API, we should see that zip code somewhere. So if you search for 2 zeros, you should see that zip code. So here is the zip code. This looks like a Puerto Rico zip code because it doesn't look like a standard US zip code. So if I Google for the zip code, you will see that this is indeed, if I Google for the zip code, you will see that this is indeed a postal code in Puerto Rico. Okay, and this is exactly how you set it up. And so now what we have is we're using a third-party API. We're using an API that we configured. We're having a mock API, and then we have an addresses. There's another variation of doing it. So in this case, what you can do is you can set type of markers as a geographic address. And then if you go into data source, you can't do mock API, users API. You have to go and you actually have to pick an address here, right? So in this case, this is kind of an alternative way. So if you pick geographic address here, and then you have an address, if you preview, you should have the exact same results as before. So if it loads, as you can see, it's right here. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can go to our mock API here, and let's say we only want let's say 5 records. So I'm going to have 7. I'm just going to click on 5. Our data was generated. So if we go in here, we only have 5 records. We're probably not going to have the Puerto Rico zip code there. And it looks like, and this is the exact same URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Bubble and we're going to refresh it. And now we have 2 records here. So now if you refresh the map, we should see much less addresses now. In fact, we see just a few addresses as compared to before when the whole map was filled with addresses. And that is because we generated a lot more records before, and now we have fewer records generated. We even have an address in Mexico as well. Now, the other thing that you can do with this specific component here is that you can specify a title window, okay? So if you click on this, you can do a title window, no, on click, or always. So if we do always, and what we want to do is it essentially asks us for a markers caption. And what we can do is we can insert dynamic data. We can say current market, and we can have address, avatar, name, created at, ID, etc. It's essentially current marker is the name of the record, and we are going to set it as name. and we are going to go back and reload this app here, we should see the actual titles on these specific markers being displayed correctly. So there you go. Now you have random names generated thanks to our markers, and you can actually click on this and you can close it. The other options that you can do is you can select it. You can do on click. Same behavior. Now it's only going to be displayed once you actually click on a marker, which seems like a very cool behavior. So I can click on this. I can see the specific data field. And that is how you do it. So it's actually very, very simple once you understand how it works. So as long as you have access, as long as you have the type of markers coming in, they could be automatically, could be as part of a your internal data field, like a user. It could be a third-party API, or it could be just a geographical address type. Remember, if you use a geographical address type, then you need to actually go in and specify it, right? So I need to actually specify it here. If I use the specific, the whole data type here, then I don't really need to specify the specific data type here. I can just use just the user's API here, simply because one of the data types is an address type. So it can automatically go here. I can specify it, and it automatically suggested this address type here that I configured back in plugins back here. So if I do initialize call here, you should see right here, it says address, and this is geographic address right here. If I do not do a geographic address, if I do a save, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna know. It's not gonna know which of the fields is an address. In that case, I actually have to go in. I have to specify geographic address, and then I have to go in here, and I actually need to go out and find it. And that makes it a little bit more complicated because I need to actually specify it, etc., etc. So in my opinion, it's a lot better to reinitialize and then specify this as a geographic address. That way you can go back to Bubble and it can actually suggest it for you correctly. As you can see, it automatically fills it in. And here I don't need to specify it anymore. Current markers is the name. We have it on click, and that way we can get the proper data. All right, guys, so this is just a quick video just to show you how to use the map component in Bubble. It's one of the more useful map components. There's a lot of things that you can do, and I really look forward to making more videos, maybe more comprehensive videos using this mock API functionality, this really cool tool, the map component, and maybe something else. So if you want to see a video such as that one, definitely put a like on this video. Leave a comment below letting me know that you want to see a video that goes into kind of more depth on this specific component, and I would be happy to make it. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Like this video if you've gotten value. Leave a comment below, and I will see you in one of the future videos.